Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Cardvoyant. I'm Chris and I'm your Cardvoyant, and today we're going to start a whole new set of cards. All right, so yikes, the Three of Swords. This is a card that people see and it's difficult. And it is. I mean, look at it. This is a difficult card. There's no two ways about it, right? What we have here, as you can see, are three swords plunged into a heart. And around this heart are these clouds, this rain, this feeling of pain, of sorrow, of, difficulty, of heartbreak, right? When you see this, you have to think about heartbreak. There's no denying that. Now this card, it's probably pretty obvious. You'll often get in readings about relationships. When relationships may be ending, or they feel they're ending, or people just asking if this relationship is the one, or if this is going to last. And it's hard to see this come up. But the cards are often not about predictions, but about acknowledging something that's happening, or simply acknowledging the truth of the situation. And so often, the person that you're reading for is going to know this truth already. What's difficult about the Three of Swords when you see this come up in any situation, but when you're talking about relationships, is I find that sometimes people come for readings wanting to have something that they want to happen confirmed, right? They want you to tell them that something is going to be okay, or that it's right even when they know it's wrong. Like everybody in their family is saying this person is wrong for you, and they're just, they're in this relationship and they're caught up in it, and they so want it to be right, but they know in their heart it's not right, and everybody around them knows it's not right. And they come to you for a reading, and it's kind of like, please tell me this is right. And then you get this card, right? So it's acknowledging something that they already know, or that they fear. And in that fear is a type of knowing, right? That's why you fear it. So this does come up in that. And while it's talking about that truth, what it's also saying is, you can see there's like no blood or gore on this card. This is talking about inner pain and your heart metaphorically being actually, stabbed by this pain, or this hurt, or this neglect, or whatever form it takes that causes you this anguish. So it's telling you that you can move forward. This feeling that you're feeling is very real, but it's not fatal. You have to go through it. You are going through it, but you can come out of it. But it's very often just acknowledging pain, also not predictive pain, but acknowledging what's happening now, or something that happened in the past. This again can be about trauma, abuse, failed relationships, the ways that people can hurt us, right? And that often comes from the people that we love the most. Those are the people that can hurt us the deepest. And this acknowledges that there's something like that going on. But again, it's not fatal, though it feels that way. And this is not meant to diminish any pain that anyone is going through. It's very much to acknowledge it and say, oh my gosh, this is, you've been through something, or you're going to go, or you're in the midst of going through something. This card wants to tell you that, that's part of life, and it's truly painful and difficult and hurtful and awful, but you're going to survive this. And honestly, and that's always hard to hear, but you'll be better for it. You know, you learn from these things. And none of us escapes this kind of pain in life. Some people's pain is extraordinary, but none of us escapes it. And so this is a lesson that we all learn. This is one of the big lessons that we learn in life, you know, to overcome, to just simply go on, and to know that there is sort of a light at the end of the tunnel. There is something to be learned from this that is going to at some point enrich our lives, enrich the ways in which we are able to deal with other people. And, you know, that empathy in life is so fantastically important. And sometimes it takes a lot to truly develop it. And this is very much what this card is talking about. It's talking about what we learn from the pain and anguish that we're going through. It acknowledges it, but it does offer some kind of hope, and all of the cards do. But it's really important to acknowledge this pain without becoming stuck in it, without losing yourself in, without making that pain your identity, right? Rising above it at some point. I mean, obviously, you have to go through it, and that's a painful process, and that's something that shouldn't be diminished. But this card ultimately does offer hope. After that 3 card, we get a little bit of a respite here with the 4 card, the 4 of Swords. And like a lot of 4 cards, it's kind of transitional in a way. This is one of the most peaceful of the sword cards. You can see the figure in it is in repose. You can see that he's lying on something that seems to be something like a casket, but he's inside of a church, and that's the main thing. And he's not in the casket, right? He's on top of it. What is below him is a sword. And if you'll notice, that sword is horizontal, while the other 3 are vertical. And these 3 vertical swords are pointing downward. Remember in the Ace card how it's pointing up toward our higher selves, our higher mind, the spiritual world? These are pointing down, because what's happened in this card is whatever the situation is, whatever the difficulties are, they have forced you to live almost completely in the physical world, divorced from perhaps your own higher self, divorced from your spiritual self, divorced sometimes from the rhythm of life that brings us happiness. So talking about that 3 card that we just had with the 3 swords in the heart, and how that can just become your life, that pain. Well, those 3 cards in this sword card are also talking about that same thing, about exactly that, about getting so caught up in the pain of the world that you're sort of like driven into the world instead of being part of it and yet apart from it, in that you are also connected to the spiritual. So that's what those 3 swords are representing. But you've got this horizontal sword that is supporting you. So it's talking about the ways in which the world, the things that you learn, as we talked about in the last card, are actually for your benefit. And you can see that at some point. And what this card is calling on you to do is to step back, to take a rest. This is sometimes called the sleep on it card, because it's that very idea of divorcing yourself from the world in some way, whether it literally is getting more rest, whether it's spending more time in meditation, whether it's literally getting away, you know, taking a break from work, sort of taking a break from the monotony and the demands of life, and being in repose, right? Having a chance to regroup, to get back in touch with your spiritual nature. And sometimes there are so many demands on us that we just don't think we're able to do that. But you can always take 5 minutes to meditate, or to listen to music, or to step outside and shut the door and just not listen to what's going in there, and just sort of la 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 for 5 minutes. But it's important that you use those 5 minutes wisely, in that you breathe deeply, take a breath. These are air cards. They're calling on you to take a deep breath and divorce yourself from the physical, and think about the bigger picture, the love that you have in your life, and that is offered to you from the spiritual realm that is always there. But mostly this is about rest, about resting your mind, and that's what meditation is. That's just making your mind stop thinking as much as you can. And if you can do that with music, if you can do that with being solitary outside in nature, if you can do that with some sort of physical activity, if you're just out, I don't know, it's winter right now, so ice skating or hiking or horseback riding, or I don't know, maybe you dance, maybe you fence, maybe you like to jump on a trampoline. All of those things require you in a lot of ways to stop thinking about everything else. And that's really what meditation is, allowing you to be in touch with your true self. And that can happen through physical things, or without, as in this card, doing anything physical, just resting. But this is about doing that. So this is advice, and this is less a card of that sort of active difficulty, and more this support card offering you some advice. And that's exactly what this is. You can see, and it's important that this takes place inside of a church, because churches offer that sanctuary. The idea of church, whether or not you attend church, the idea of church is that idea of sanctuary. Now, the stained glass window is really the only real, other than the golden support of the figure and the sarcophagus, is only the real color in this card. And so your eyes are drawn to it. And, there's different interpretations. I've seen some people say, oh, this is mother and child. But to me, this feels very much like a Christ figure. And when you think of Christ, obviously you think of that love, that acceptance, that offering of hope and mercy and forgiveness. And sometimes we need to forgive others or forgive ourselves, and also of healing. So it's just such a positive part of this card, and so hopeful. And despite the fact that, a lot of people kind of fear the sword cards, there's no reason to fear them unless, you're fearing life itself. And that's what these cards speak to help you not do that. And this card, this 4 card, is such a peaceful, sweet, positive reminder of that we have support, that we have help, that we can get through this, that there is a reason for all of this. There are things we are learning, and as I said before, we'll be better for this. And this card gives us an idea of one way to begin to feel that. So it's a very positive card, and it's really a card of hope. Oh, the peacefulness of the 4 card is really gone in this 5 card. As I've said, in all these suits of cards, the 5 cards are always somewhat difficult, and they represent this often transitional difficulty before you start to get to some of the higher number cards that are generally a little bit easier cards in one way or another. So this 5 card, as you can see, you've got this larger figure at the forefront who's got these spoils of victory. This is the winner of some kind of battle, and he's holding, 3 of the swords. The other swords are on the ground, and you can see the other 2 figures, smaller in this card, who have been defeated, who are, sad and humiliated and downtrodden, right? And this card is about this battle. This card is about losing and winning. It's about this dichotomy. We've talked about, swords being double-edged. I think the biggest thing for me in this card, and there's a lot of symbolism. I mean, there's the clouds, and again, there's the water, this emotional nature, and there's the colors. This passion and this green and the bigger figure, and the other figures are golden, which represents this inner light that we all have, and yet they're so broken, they're so defeated. But as I was going to say, the biggest thing that I notice on this card whenever I see it is the face of the victor, because he's not triumphant in a way that an Olympian might be when they win. He is smirking. There's only one way to describe that look on his face, and it's a smirk. And that represents the idea of unfairness, of cheating, sometimes of winning at all costs, putting this idea of winning above anything else. So this can represent the person that you're reading for, or yourself. Do you have this winner takes all, win at all costs kind of attitude? But so much more often, the client you're reading for, or yourself, if you're reading for yourself, is represented in the other 2 figures. This idea of having lost something, and often, unfairly, or you feel that it's unfairly. It can be actually something that's sort of been deceitful. This can be cheating. Sometimes you'll see this in readings about relationships, romantic relationships. Obviously, it's always about some kind of relationship. But so often, the bigger part of this is that it's that idea of losing to someone who may have won deceitfully or unfairly or unkindly. It's the idea of it's not enough to win. Somebody else needs to fail. So it's a very difficult card, and again, it often acknowledges what somebody has been through. And it's not a card that speaks to revenge, because look at this figure and how unlikable he is, right? You don't want to get caught up in that yourselves. And yet what do you do? And again, often the message of the cards is you move through it. These cards, these figures in the background are feeling awful and defeated and humiliated, but all they can do is acknowledge those feelings and move on. The guy holding the swords, the winner, is still going to be holding those swords. So how do you move on from this? Now, sometimes this card speaks to exactly what it is. Something has failed. You tried something and it just did not work out. And again, this is a card that just acknowledges that and encourages you to move on. This happens. This is a story of life. Some people are like this. Some endeavors end like this. Some relationships end like this. It's up to us to sort of gather ourselves, even though we've lost our swords, gather ourselves and move on to our next challenge. And we have more knowledge, right? We've gained something from this experience at least, and that is knowledge. And so we can move on at least with that knowledge to something. So this card ultimately is about some kind of battle, and it may end up being an inner battle. the cards sort of represent that storm in ourselves that's created when we have some of these difficulties, when we're cheated, right, or cheated on, or when people fail us in some way, fail our expectations in some way, deceive us sometimes. But we do move on. And those swords that we've left on the ground, those swords that the victor, such as he is, holds in his hands, always end up being swords that we don't want. This is a lesson that we're taught again and again in life, and that is a hard lesson to learn. But when we let go of those things that we have lost, we're able to accumulate, to scoop up, to rebuild other things. And we realize that those things, those spoils that this victor thinks he has won from us, taken from us, end up being things that we don't want or need or no longer serve us in our lives. And at some point, we'll understand that. Six of Swords. I kind of love this card. I know a lot of people look at this card and they see, oh, this sort of huddled figure. Take a look at this figure. She is, I always think of it as a she. You can think of it however you'd like, but she's in this skiff, this ferry, that's being pushed. So we know the water's not deep, right? The ferryman is holding a pole, so you know the water's not too deep. And the figure looks sort of humbled, braced against the cold, but has this child next to her that is seeking protection, also offering hope, as children often do when they're symbolized in the cards, this idea of hope. And then there's these swords in the skiff. So sometimes people think, oh, this was this difficult card. Look at this poor figure in the card being, shuttled across these cold waters and all that. But I see it very positively. Many interpretations will say, oh, look, there's swords in the boat and they're not weighing the boat down. And that's kind of like the best thing that they can say about the swords. And I always think of it as more. These are the swords that we've learned from, right? In the 2 and in the 3 and in the 4 and in the 5. And now they're in our boat and they are informing our boat ride. They're really guiding it. You can see, in a way that the ferryman and the person in the boat are using them to look through, to guide them to this brighter shore, to this other place where trees are growing, where there's growth, period. You can see that on the right side of the boat, the water is turbulent, and that of course represents what we've been through. But up ahead, and as the ferryman guides them and pushes them to the left, the water is smooth. The water is, it looks refreshing and calm and like almost eager to take us to this new destination. So this card can often be about very literal things, sometimes about travel, sometimes about moving, where there's a little bit of, a little bit of pain in leaving, but knowing that it's the right thing to do. So it can be literally about that kind of move or travel. But so often it's about moving on from a person or a situation, sometimes a job, all those kinds of things that require a big transition, that take us to a better place, right? So it's about this pain that we've experienced in different ways in the earlier cards, and offers this hope of moving into something new and having the ability to release some of that pain and understand that these swords that are in the boat that represent these things that we've been through are steering us to a new and better place. I also wanted to mention that a couple times, and actually just the other day, I got this in a reading, And I understood very clearly that this was about an inner journey, that the person that I was reading for was really all the figures in the card. She was the hurt and the confused person, the adult that had been through stuff, but had been through it. She was moving on. In fact, she had moved. And so that was very much about acknowledging what she had been through and the strength that she had, just as this figure in the boat does, and just as the ferryman does, to navigate the waters to bring you to a better place. And she had done that. But she was also represented by the child. And in her case, it was very much about her inner child, her childhood that had been extremely difficult, and the need to acknowledge that hurt and confused child that still existed within her. And this was one thing that she was still working through. So she had done so much to come through this, but it was important to nurture and acknowledge and comfort that inner child that still existed as a part of herself. But this card acknowledges that she could do that. You know, she had this ability now to have the strength to really repair and rebuild herself. So this can be a very symbolic card. I mean, all the cards are symbolic, but this can be very symbolic of the inner self. But it can also refer to something very tangible and very physical, you know, just an actual journey, actual travel, a move, a job change, a new relationship, all of those things that are transitional and that sometimes have a little bit of pain attached to them in the past, but something that you've moved through. And, you know, that's what these sword cards talk about, as I've mentioned before, because you can get other cards that are about transition and moving. You know, you might get a chariot card or something like that. But this card is specifically about having moved on from a difficult situation, overcoming it, or being in the midst of overcoming it, and having the strength to move on and to navigate into clearer, smoother, calmer waters, using the knowledge that you've gained, these swords in the boat, to do that and to go on to something better, brighter, more positive. So it's a great card. And as I said, so many of these sword cards, they look like difficult, and they can be, but they are also so positive. I mean, every single tarot card offers hope, offers ideas, offers comfort, offers a way for you to plan for a better future. And the way that you so often do that is by becoming in touch with yourself, dealing with these things. You know, the sword cards are talking about us dealing with things in order to move on and to make our lives better. And that's what this card is. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you're enjoying these videos. I hope you're enjoying these sword videos. We've got 2 more videos that we'll do. One through that is the 7 through 10 cards, and then we'll do the court cards like we have in the other suits. And I hope that, you know, they'll prove useful to you in understanding tarot cards. And I'm so excited that so many of you are anxious to learn. It's fantastic to see that, because they are just such a fantastic tool for your life, you know, for enhancing your life and for helping other people. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time. Bye.